Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. In each episode, we invite guests to have honest conversations about their mental health journeys with the goal of destigmatizing mental health within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Due to the nature of the podcast, we'll be discussing a variety of mental health topics and possibly triggering experiences. While we and the majority of our guests are not trained professionals, we encourage you to practice self-care while listening and seek professional guidance if you or a loved one is in need of support. With that said, let's start the episode.
Okay, so hello. My name is Ryan Kageyama, and my mental health journey has been volatile. And I want to say volatile just because it has its ups, it has its downs, but I think looking back at how things have been in the past couple of years, there's never been I guess like a linear point of mental health for me. It's always an up and down journey, and going through like the ups and downs through all of it. It's kind of like crypto markets to me. Like nothing's ever the same. It's a constant battle of being happy, being great, but also working to maintain that level of mental well-being. But also there's just moments where it's just dips down low and you're like, wow, this sucks.
Hello, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Changing Tides podcast. My name is Matthew Yonemura, and once again, I am your host of this podcast. Thank you for coming back and listening. I hope you enjoyed episode 1 of season 2, which was our 13th episode overall, but we're going to continue this show with another amazing guest. But before we get there, I just want to talk a little bit about Changing Tides and everything we have in the works. Once again, we have CT Stream, our therapy stipend program, covering the cost of 6 to 10 sessions per participant. And so far, we're really proud of that program. And not so far, I mean, we'll continue to be proud of that program, but we're still working on it. It's our pilot program. It's the first time we've launched it, but we're really proud of that. And we'll see what it looks like in the future. Other than that, Changing Tides, we have a big year ahead of us and big years to come after this. A lot of amazing stuff already in the works, planning that out, trying to figure out when it will take place. But lots of updates to come from us, and I hope you'll stick around and stay tuned to hear more about that. But enough about us and Changing Tides. I want to start getting into this guest. He is a friend of mine. I met him through Changing Times, and I'm really glad that I was able to connect with him through this amazing program. I'm sorry if you're not a coffee drinker. We talk a lot about coffee in this episode. We geek out a little bit on different stuff. I should have talked to him more about cryptocurrency, but I mean, hey, like, just another topic for people to skip through if that's not something that's up your alley. So, but I love this conversation so much. I was able to connect with him when we haven't been able to talk a lot lately, or we just haven't talked a lot lately. So without further ado, I hope you'll bear with us through our nerdy conversations, or what you might find to be nerdy. But I'd like to introduce the guest of this podcast episode, Ryan Kageyama. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. One of my homies, you brought us, you're the inspiration behind the CT cafes, and I've gotten to know you over time. You're a crossword wizard. You are a coffee connoisseur. But before we get into anything else, I want to talk a little bit more about your mental health journey, why you described it as such, but, if you don't mind getting into detail a little bit about it.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think I'd say there's a lot of peaks and pits to it, just because like there are moments I'd say within the past 6 to 5 years where like there was just moments that I felt like I was on top of the world. Like I felt like things were great. I was on top of my mental well-being. I like to journal a lot. I like to have creative outlets, and I felt like I was producing more work in that aspect. And without even thinking about it too much. But then on the flip side, there are moments where uh, shit kind of hit the fan, especially with COVID. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've had a lot more of those types of moments within the past 2 years specifically. And it's been extremely difficult to bounce back but there are, between the peaks and the pits, there's always the journey of going up and there's always the journey of going down. So I feel like, there's a lot of in between moments where, I'm actively trying to maintain my mental health and mental well-being, but there are also moments where I could feel myself like slipping mentally,
Mm.
and there's the decline that's happening right in front of me.
Yeah, that's kind of the scary thing it too is like that those downtimes are about to hit. It's like for some reason you think like, oh, like I've experienced it so many times that like I know how to avoid it now, but it's like no, like it's gonna like sometimes it's unavoidable, but I think that's just part of the journey, part of life. But you brought up your outlets, and one of them is your website. If you don't mind us plugging, it's cags.me. Um, and like looking through it, that was like I didn't even read any of this prior to knowing you, but like you're very candid on there, and you have a lot of open writings in it. So it's like a lot about your mental health, and you put some of your creative outlets on there. But like, what inspired to put out your thoughts so publicly?
Yeah, so throwing it back to 2009, back when Tumblr was a thing. Um, I mean, I never really saw like writing as like a creative outlet until probably like during college,
Mm.
when I was more prominent in like some of the writings on my own Tumblr. But I started back in like 2009, just writing things out in my mind, going through that angsty teen phase of like, no one understands me, no one gets me. But over time, I really did like the feeling of just being able to write and word vomit onto like a platform, and not necessarily like I wouldn't say it's out like publicly. Like anyone can access it, but it's not something I'm like constantly telling people like, "Hey, go check out my new posts" or things
Right.
like that. The perspective I have on it now is like I just like to write things down, and I want to have that bookkeeping somewhere, and people can read it if they want, but it's not something that I'm actively trying to put out there in terms of work. But
Mm.
I really enjoy it. Like, just it's another form of journaling, in my opinion. And I like to have some creative like way of expressing myself. And the older I get, the more I realize like just putting words to, I guess now a computer, is extremely powerful.
So like it is another I get that like it's another form of journaling. Like I utilize my own social media now and then to like put out very candid thoughts, but like when people, I'm sure people have read it and they've reached out to you about certain things. Like, how does that feel? Because it is like a form of journaling, but it's public. So like, how do you react when people bring it up to you?
It's been very few and far in between of people actually reaching out. So like when I you said that you were going to talk about this and ask questions about this, I was actually very surprised on it too. I'd say I've only had like maybe one or two instances where a friend reached out
Hmm.
and like talked about it, and in a way it was just more positive, like them saying like, hey, I really liked how you you did this. Like I loved talking specifically about the post I reflected on in 2019, where I imagined myself talking to myself and two different people, and he really liked that idea, and he supported that, and he said, I want to see more of this. Like I know you're a creative person, and if you're ever wondering like who's reading it, he was like, I'm definitely going to read it, and I appreciated that. But in terms of like the content and what I talked about, like because it's more for myself, and like I don't really, it's not something that like I openly talk about with some of my direct friends, but like I know that just by them reaching out and saying like, hey, I read through this, I feel like that's their signal of, I support you, man. Like
Mm.
we know you have your ups and downs, but like we're going to support you regardless.
Yeah,
So it's not something that like comes up in conversation a whole lot, but I do appreciate when people do reach out. They're like, hey, I read this. And I'm like, oh, cool.
yeah, definitely. Um, but like going off of your website and creativity, different outlets. Um, what introduced me to you is your coffee club, Fuck Yeah Coffee, because that inspired CT cafes, which has become one of our really popular initiatives. But can you talk about like what inspired you to do Fuck Yeah Coffee and like how you titled it?
Yeah. So again, going back to the Tumblr references, because back in 2009, Tumblr had a very prominent string of blogs with just the
Mm-hmm.
phrase "fuck yeah," almost to the
Mm.
point where Tumblr itself would like capitalized on that. I got to visit the Tumblr office back in 2014 because my roommate was actually working there at the time, and they had these little cards that just said like "fuck yeah" across some of their like lunch tables,
Uh-huh.
and people would write like what they were excited about,
Hmm.
whether it was like a work initiative or like just something there like a hobby. So I always thought that was cool. And at the time of trying to think of like when I wanted to create like Instagram handles, I actually have a string of fuck yeah Instagram handles that I'm keeping for future projects. But so it felt natural that coffee would keep one of them. But going off of like how did coffee clubs start and like where did it come from? I actually pulled inspiration from another Instagram uh, project, I guess you would say, or another Instagram creative person. At Potato is like he doesn't know I exist really, but he's actually a barista from one of my favorite coffee shops back in my hometown, Sacramento. He moved on to Chicago, but he started his own project called Noodle Club, and I've been following the project for a little bit. And his idea was just to invite people over to eat noodles that he had hand pulled. And I always thought that was so cool. But he intentionally did not invite all of his friends. It was just kind of like put something out there, come eat noodles and get to know different people. And that pretty much inspired me of like, oh, I want to do something like that. That sounds so cool, being able to organize an event like that. But at the time in 2019, when I came up with the project, I knew I wanted to create something, but inviting people over to eat like my own food was probably a terrible idea. I couldn't cook at the time. And so I had this like want to bring people together from different parts of my network already. I just needed a really good reason why. And that's when I was watching the barbershop talks with like Jon Stewart, LeBron James, Kendrick Lamar. And it was at a time when, they were talking about how do you invoke change? How do you change people's ideas? Like just a open-ended question. And LeBron immediately just jumped up and was like, you just talk about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. That's how I'm going to bring people together, through just being able to talk about common things amongst different groups of people. I saw it as like a social experiment. Like, how would this even pan out? At the time I was really getting into coffee. So I was like, what if I brought people together for a cup of coffee, or maybe various cups of coffee, with a specific idea to talk about, and try to get different peoples from all different like demographics and different backgrounds, just so we can all come together and just talk about a single topic. And going back to as to why I wanted to bring different people from my network together, when I had just moved to SF, I had met the same types of people over and over again. Being young in SF, you meet a lot of like yuppies. I'm Asian, so like I meet a lot of yappies, people who make a lot of money, live in a big city, and like it was really easy to socialize, but I always felt like it was really difficult to connect with people on like beyond the surface level. And being in SF, you see kind of the duality of all this wealth being in such a large city, but then there's so many homeless people there. And it was one of those weird feelings of like, this is something that no one's talking about because everyone's too scared to even approach the topic or discussion. So like eventually that was a goal of mine of like, how do you get to those difficult conversations? And like watching LeBron James saying, how do you invoke change, the first thing you do is talk about it. So with this end goal in mind, and I was like, I got to start somewhere in the middle where it's a little bit easier for me to just bring these people together and create that conversation. And that really sparked the first meeting of Coffee Club. I guess meeting was the only word I can think of, but I invited 6 different people out of my network that I was relatively close with. And I said, hey, I got this like idea. Would you like to come over for a cup of coffee and talk about a specific topic? And everyone who came had come prepared with a question or topic around a specific, or around the topic of millennials and or dating. And everyone who attended was I think everyone was single and had gone through like online dating and stuff like that and their own tribulations. But the one thing that stood out to me was everyone was a different age. So people had different perspectives on like what that meant. And I had no idea how this would turn out. I was kind of freaking out because I didn't think anyone was going to come prepared with anything. But yeah, I originally told everyone, oh, it'd be about an hour. Everyone stayed for about 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And people like actually left and they connected outside a coffee club. And 2 of the people who had joined the first one actually ended up working together. So hearing all that, I was like, wait, this is something cool. Like there's nothing out here relatively close to like what this is. So continued on that just momentum and started doing more and more meetings, trying to find different people throughout different parts of my network, through work, through like friends of friends. And I even got people who recommended, oh, I think this person would like to join this. Or I like this person would like to join it. And that's kind of how it went from there. However, things did kind of die down. I do want to put that out there that like since the pandemic hit, I haven't been able to have any coffee clubs since.
Hold on, I'm gonna be right back. I really need to blow my nose. I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
Give me 1 sec, dude. We're taking a quick break to introduce Anchor, the sponsor of this podcast. Anchor is free, first and foremost, which is amazing. Who doesn't love free? And you can record everything directly into Anchor. It's so easy to use Anchor. That's how you are listening to this podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, the Anchor website. You're listening to it because I uploaded this podcast episode to Anchor. If you want to start your own podcast, I highly recommend Anchor. It's made this whole process so easy. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right. My bad. Okay, hold on. We're Asian.
Okay.
I'm sure you understand. I'm sure you know or someone in your family has allergies.
Oh, all my allergies actually disappeared when I moved back down to LA.
Okay, well, whatever.
Hey,
You're better than me.
I used to have like back in like Sacramento, allergies were terrible. I used to get so bad allergies, I couldn't go to school. It was almost like I was sick.
Dude,
Like I hated that.
I remember in the third. Do you care if we keep this in?
Yeah, go
Okay.
for it.
Dude, in the third grade, I remember so distinctly. Well, first off, that's when my vision started getting bad, so I had to sit right in the front of class. But I had to sit in front of class, and my allergies were really bad too. So I'd be sitting in the front, but I'd have to go to the back of the room to the tissue box, blow my nose, and I swear I'd do that like 100 times in a day, and it was just like it was so awkward. I felt so insecure about it. I was just like, damn.
It's that walk of shame where everyone's like looking at you walking back, and then they gotta hear you like blow your nose.
At a certain point, I'd walk out of the classroom to like blow my nose hard just so I could get everything out of there. And it's like then I'd walk back in, then it was extra awkward. Everyone would turn, but yeah.
I know that feeling. It builds character.
But like this is kind of a segue. But in Chicago, my allergies were like so much better because there's like in the winter everything's dead, so there's no pollen in the air.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just curious. You said the barista who inspired who did the noodle club, right?
Mm-hmm.
They moved to Chicago and opened a shop.
No.
Okay.
He's no longer a barista, but he
Okay.
does like freelance video and stuff.
Okay.
But I actually ran into him once in LA, and like this guy is not big by any means. He has like 1,000 followers at the time.
Okay.
But I like walked up to him and I was like, "Hi, are you Philip?" And he was just like, "Oh yeah." And I was like, explained who I was, and his friends, like he was with a group of friends, and all of them were like, did he just get recognized from Instagram? And,
That's crazy.
And I talked to him for like 5 minutes, and I was just like, "Yeah, man, you made me a latte back in like 2017, and I thought you were cool because you had a huge man bun." It was just one of those small moments before like Instagram was like a connector of like people outside of like friendship. So like I thought it was funny. He thought it was interesting too, and I could tell his friends were getting a kick out of it.
Interesting, wild, but. Anyway, off of these different tangents, I wanted to get back into talking about you, Ryan. I wanted to ask you about the coffee club and if there's a specific topic that you came in with that you think yielded a really like the most powerful conversation or one that sticks out.
Yeah, so definitely some were better than others, but my favorite one definitely was family history. And it was such an interesting group because we had one person who came and she said, "I actually don't know my family beyond my parents." And she explained that she was adopted, and she didn't really know like her biological history. And it was interesting because she talked about her perspective on family, and I thought that was a good tangent. But on the flip side, we had someone who came in and was like, "Oh, every generation writes a book." Or like adds to this family history book that they have. And I was just like, "What?" And so he's like, "Yeah, I can go back generations and read up on who like my great grandparents were." And he's like, "It's just a family lineage thing."
Wow.
And it kind of opened up my perspective on just like what family really means to different people. Like, so like I used to assume that everyone had the same family foundations that I had. But that kind of opened up my eyes. Like everyone views family a little bit different, and it's something that I still think about like to this day. Oh, that was probably like my favorite one,
Mm.
just because that conversation. Also, someone threw up at that meeting, and I felt really bad about it. We had 5 cups of coffee, like not huge cups. Usually when I do it, I brew different types of beans,
Okay.
and this girl, like I guess after the meeting, she went home. She had a lot of fun, and she messaged me, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like just want to let you know I threw up. So let anyone who's caffeine sensitive know that they might
Oh
like
my
not to drink too
gosh.
much." And I felt terrible. I was like, "Oh man," but she's like, "I had so much fun. Like, let me know if I can come to another one."
Oh
I
my
was like,
goodness.
"Okay."
Dang. Well, I'm glad that this person at least came away with a positive experience even after all that. But that's interesting, yeah, because a lot of people like that I interact with, um, like even the definition of family is so different. Like some people put a lot of value in the family you make, and then there's a lot of people who have like the value in the family that you're born with because that's a blood bond that can't be broken. But like it's really interesting to, yeah, I'm sure that yielded a crazy conversation, especially when you hear two sides of the spectrum, like one that's super connected to their family roots and then one that really doesn't know it. But you know I guess what I know that you heard from LeBron on the barbershop, the shop, I think is what it's called, I think.
Mhm.
But he said, you make change by talking about it. But like, what inspired you to go out of your way and be like, oh, I could do this myself?
I don't I don't know, actually. That's a good question. Me being naive and thinking like, oh, if I can see it, I can do it. But also, I think it was more of a motivation just to create deeper connections within my network and get to know some of these people and like that I come across. Just it's really hard to reach out to someone and be like, hey, let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
As we get older, it's such a hard, like difficult thing to really do. And I also wanted to not only create my own connections, but I wanted other people to come together and create connections as well. When I talked to some of my friends from college who are also in SF at the time, it was a common topic that we talked about. It was like it's so hard to meet people outside of
Mm-hmm.
work. We're so ingrained to our 9 to 5. How do we meet people outside of work that doesn't involve alcohol, doesn't involve going out to the club, or involve partying late at night? And so that's why I intentionally did all these at like 10 a.m. on a
Huh.
Saturday morning. And I appreciated the people who actually came because it showed there is some sort of motivation across different people, and like I did made me feel less alone in that.
Yeah. No, that's great because I think that I did a podcast with Ken Fong, who does another Asian American podcast, but he was saying like there's something about your generation that says like, oh, I could just do this thing, whereas in the past, like the baby boomers, like they're like, oh, there's all these gatekeepers. But it's interesting to hear that you just kind of put something together. Um, but I've been curious too, like what got you so into coffee? Because that's kind of a thing now, but I feel like you were ahead of the curve of like being
Mhm.
interested in coffee, like actually caring. I say that
I
as I'm drinking coffee bean, but like,
No, I feel like no, I definitely not a trailblazer in that aspect. I feel like coffee is just one of the I don't know, self-branded hipster, I guess, but like I drank a lot of coffee in college,
uh-huh.
and that was just to stay up. And I had a roommate who was way like I look at him and he was way ahead of the curve,
Hmm.
but he would brew coffee, and he was very into like the process of like coffee and how it was roasted, and where beans come from and like the taste notes. And there's like a general understanding that once you know what type of coffee you like, without I'm talking about like drip coffee, so like
Hmm.
anything that's like pour over Chemex or um, just a brewed coffee. Once you know your flavor and what you like, it's really hard to like go to anything else.
Hmm.
So once I figured out post college, I was doing a lot of studying in coffee shops still, even after college was done. Sacramento is no shortage of that, so I was able to try different coffee, French press, and that's Sacramento's coffee scene is exactly it's fantastic. I highly recommend anyone who goes to Sacramento. That's like one of the only things to do there. But once I figured out, like I really liked light roast coffee because of its acidity. Like I was like, all right, I'm just gonna keep drinking this forever. And eventually it kind of evolved into, okay, I want to brew my own coffee, and like learn how to do this because coffee is expensive, and in SF it was like $6 for a pour over. It's not sustainable. But what really pushed me over the edge to figure out like brew methods and things like that was I started to work at a private equity firm, and I had to make the coffee was terrible. It was absolute shit. And like people would come in just like, oh yeah, it just kicks me and wakes me up. And I found that their beans were really good. I was like, okay, no wonder they're shelling out for like good coffee, but someone's coming in every morning, office manager, and just doing a batch brew and like using too many beans or too little beans. And I kind of took it a point of like, I can make better coffee than this. And so I brought in my own equipment, and next thing I know, I'm brewing coffee for everyone else around me. So I got a lot of practice of just making coffee, like doing pour over coffees in itself. They had an espresso machine with like a milk frother, so I tried to learn how to do lattes in that sense. And just it's a common topic of like that I started to talk about with new people. They're like, oh, what are you into? It's like, oh, I really like coffee. And I think I'm not as interested in like the methodology of brewing so much as like the idea of just having a cup of coffee. Like I like it's almost zen to me on a Saturday morning, sitting outside reading a newspaper and having a really good cup of coffee. I feel like that's like the cherry on top. But also too, it's like a common way to connect with people. Always really like that effect, just because it's not like alcohol, but in a way it is, because you get like once you drink caffeine, you have a little bit more pep in your step, you're more engaged. And I've always really, really liked that.
That's a good point because when you first said that, I was thinking like, oh, it's just something to discuss like while you're hanging out, like similar to getting drinks. It's like, oh, like what's your drink? Do you like it? I thought it was on that level. But then you talk about the caffeine side and the extra pep in your step, and that's a good point too. Like I think I've had a coffee almost every episode of this podcast, and it's like it's that thing that helps me get, talking. But yeah, I as much as I love coffee, for me it's like it could be Starbucks and that's enough for me. But I think I need to get more into like the flavors of it because I don't know if you've been to Kirari West.
Sure. Oh, I have not.
Um, they have like a really good cold brew. They'll like list like the flavors, like the notes that it's gonna be in it, and like that really stands out to me. It's something that like I look forward to, like seeing like, oh, is it the same one as yesterday? Is it the same one tomorrow? If people don't like coffee, they're gonna hate this episode, but I think it's really interesting.
Yeah,
But
I think once you find what flavors you like, then you realize like, oh, there's like layers to this. Like everyone knows coffee is just maybe this black bitter tasting liquid, but like when you really figure out what you like and what you don't like, it's so easier to know what you want. And like I've made it a point of like even my roommates, like I brew them coffee. I know what they like and I know what they're not going to like. So I'm not going to make them coffee that they're not going to like. But to the outside eye looking in, like you're just making coffee. I'm like, there's a little bit more detail into it.
Right. Well, I'll stop boring the non-coffee drinkers or just people who don't really care, and I'll kind of go on to get to know you a little bit better and ask you about your book club, which is titled, if you don't
Just
mind.
book club. Actually,
Oh, is it just book club? It's not Fuck Yeah Book Club? Oh, okay.
There's no Fuck Yeah Book Club.
Oh, okay. My mistake. But it's just another layer of like connecting, I'm sure. But like, what inspired that idea?
Yeah, shouts to COVID-19, because that's really what inspired it.
Right.
But I think once the pandemic hit, I was searching for more things to do, and just being able to talk with other people. And I kind of went along the lines of like coffee club of like, how can I get people to actually come and have like somewhat of a topic to talk about? So that way it's not just free form, video chat. I've always found it really awkward. You jump onto a call with like your friends that you kind of know, but no one really knows each other. It's silent. It's crickets. So I figured, okay, like I was reading a lot at the time. I talked to a couple of friends. I believe Cortland was one of them. I was like, hey, like, would you be interested in doing like a book club? and put out a poll on like Instagram and say, all right, who's interested? Yes, no. And I think the first meeting we had like 14 people come.
Wow.
And it was cool to see. I was like, wow, like 14 of my friends read books. That's surprising.
It is surprising, actually.
Yeah.
Like,
But over time, like, people drop off. Like it
right.
was a weekly thing. Looking back, like weekly is pretty hard to like make and
Yeah.
like to keep up on the readings. But eventually over time, it really stuck with about like five people,
Oh,
five or six
nice.
people, depending upon the book that we were reading. But I will say, like, book club is over. We
Mm,
decided to take a break because the people included, everyone has things going on in their life.
right.
But I kind of like the fact that it did have an ending to it, because I kind of look back at it now, like when you say book club, like, oh yeah, that was a great time. Would I bring it back? Like, yeah, probably not right now. Still, like, there's a lot of other things going on, but it's
Right.
something that I hope that one day we can definitely revitalize or bring back to life.
Mm. So, I guess like one of the main reasons why I bring up both of these, and like I kind of asked you separately, but it seems like, connection is clearly really important to you, but like community seems to be something as well, like forming communities, drawing from communities. Like, can you talk about the importance of having a community is for you?
Yeah, I think this is the one question I don't really have a clear cut answer to, and I think it's something that I'm still trying to understand as a person for myself. Um, I like being surrounded with people, but I also like deeper connections. So like in a way, it's like that I'm an introverted extrovert, or like that duality of that.
Right.
I like being surrounded by people, but I also like getting to know people and on a deeper level, whether it be their how they approach a book, how what their views on a specific topic are. I feel like that's the way you really get to know someone and who they are. And I feel like it's such a missed opportunity, not being able to connect with certain people on that aspect. So like I feel like I'm still trying to understand why I really like this. Maybe it's just how I you know want to connect with people, and there's no ifs and or there's no like reason why to it. It's just like me as a human being. But I'm still trying to understand that, because like
Mm,
there are new ideas still popping up in my head of like, oh yeah, we can make a club out of that, or we
mm,
can make an Instagram, or I don't know. But they not all of them are acted upon.
mm. Do you mind sharing one idea that you possibly have?
Yeah, so like another one that actually has been lingering, I still can't figure out why I haven't done it, is just more like a basketball group
Mm,
of like local friends, and just being able to have like a regularly occurring like time where we play basketball or something. I've been a part of groups, and like I've always appreciated the people who have organized that. Um, and I was like, oh, maybe that's something that like I could, bring together different types of people. That's like the immediate one that comes to mind. But I guess some of the other ones probably I tried to do a movie club that failed.
mm.
That failed flat. That was probably the worst group experiment that I've ever tried to do.
How
But
come?
oh gosh, well, it was a great experience of like some of the movies that we'd watch, but
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone has a different perspective on like what a movie club should do. We had some
Mm.
people like from college at UCLA that came forth and had really good observations and breakdowns of movies, and then we also had the people who just wanted to watch movies with other people, and kind of
Mm.
just like casually talk about them. So I felt like having two differing types of groups like made it a little bit difficult to facilitate.
Right.
And I don't think one is better than the other, because the deeper you go into the movie, I feel like the more you break it down and the more you realize like, okay, maybe this movie's problematic or it's kind of bad.
Oh,
Like, and other
yeah.
people are like, they just want to keep that entertainment factor.
Right.
So like it was one of those, like eventually I feel like people kind of dropped off, and there wasn't much motivation on myself to like keep it going. So I was like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah, for sure. But um, I guess moving forward and just talking about, you know, just from and not like someone like we're friends, but like I don't know you super duper well.
Mhm.
It seems like creative outlets is another thing for you. So whether it be like film photography, because I know you have fuck yeah film, um, like or like creating, like what does that outlet mean to you? And it's kind of like a kind of a solo act to create. I feel like.
Mhm.
So what's that? Does that provide any type of outlet for you?
Yeah. really I've always wanted to create art just from the get-go when I was younger. And I didn't really see myself as a creative person, and I have a identity crisis at times where like I'm like I'm not a creative, but then
Hmm.
I'm like I do all these things that you know would call me a creative, but I don't do it consistent enough. So am I actually a creative person?
Hmm.
But what it boils down to is just actually just doing it, and the act of doing it I really enjoy. Being able to go out and take photos. And I had a really great photography teacher growing up. His name is Mr. Lee. Shouts to him. I don't think he'll ever listen to this, but he was the person who put a camera in my hand and said, go out and take photos, and try and take photos of what you see, and try and take photos that no one else is going to be able to replicate. And like when I first started, I really thought like that was my perspective of photography, and that's what I've kind of kept that foundational base going, or as I've grown.
Hmm.
So even now today, like as little as I do shoot, I have been shooting. I just don't post a whole lot. Um, to me, that's okay. Like I do it for myself. I like the act of doing it. I like being able to talk to others and send photos to others people. And my I guess my recent outlet has been printing up photos and being able to
Hmm.
put it up in my own place. I just moved
Nice.
to a new house, not buying, but like renting. But I want to just plaster up my artwork everywhere because I'm like, this is my own museum. This is where
Hmm.
like I can showcase people like what I've done.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a personal expression. It's a way for me to just kind of express things I can't really put onto paper, and things I limited in with words. Um, yeah.
Can I nerd with you and like try to figure out like because I love to shoot on film. Like I
Mhm.
don't take a bunch of pictures with my phone unless it's like my dog. But like is there what is it about film photography for you that you really get a kick out of? Like why do you because it's more expensive than shooting pictures on your phone
Oh
and
yeah.
printing those. So like what do you like about it?
I like the how careful you have to be, and how cognizant of your surroundings and what you're shooting and how you're shooting it.
Right.
With digital photography, like you can take unlimited photos. You can take unlimited photos on your phone. But with film, you're restricted to a number of shots on your camera. And I've always found that the more you restrict yourself, the more creative you're going to be.
Yeah.
So like even the types of lenses I shoot, I don't even shoot zoom. It's all prime lenses. And I've always found that like if I restrict myself more, I'm that much more creative with and thoughtful of how I'm shooting. And I think I produce like my personal favorite photos when I'm putting myself into this box. Doesn't mean like I don't think I'm like restricting myself creatively. I just think like having that personal balance of like getting the best photo with a certain constraint really challenges someone's creativity, and that's what I want like really like about it. Also too, like you take a photo, you forget about it. I don't
Right.
shoot that often, so like I'm still developing film where like I'm finding photos from like 2020 or 2019. I'm like, what? I forgot about that.
Yeah. Do you develop your own stuff?
No, no, no.
Oh, I was about to say like that's another level.
No, no, no. I mean, it's
Okay.
so hard to find the darkroom these days, or
Yeah.
even like create your own. But I know I
Yeah.
get it developed and scanned. There's a shop in Sacramento I really like going to. They do like high res scans,
Hmm.
and they do APS film development, and that's one of my cameras is APS film, and it's really hard to find people who develop those.
Huh.
So I really like going there.
Nice, nice. Um, if you need someone local, 1 hour photo world on
Oh yeah,
Hawthorne,
that's where I go.
that's the spot. Yeah, that's the spot.
One day we're gonna run into each other.
Probably. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't see many people in there, so maybe. But yeah, I think the same thing for me in terms of shooting on film. Like, I'm a lot more careful and deliberate about it. And then, like, when I get it developed and like call, like all those memories come rushing back when you're looking through, and then like you're able to send those. Like, if you take pictures of your friends, like you're able to send them to them. It's like, oh, I remember that too. Like, it's kind of a reason to reconnect with someone. But yeah, I agree. Like shooting on digital, no matter what, like a DSLR or your phone, like you could take so many shots, it just kind of loses its value. But
Yeah, and
um,
not I mean not to like discredit like
oh right,
iPhoneography at all. Like I think some of the creative work that people are doing today is like phenomenal. I just think for film, people who have stuck with it, like you get there's something to it that you can't really explain that makes you want to keep doing it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I think it's the creative factor. I also just think film for some reason it has, it's no filter will ever replace the look of film,
Right.
and especially if you're shooting on expired film, if you're shooting black and white, like it's a whole different landscape that you just can't translate digitally. Not yet. I do
Right.
think in the future it will, but not yet.
Wait, you're trying to tell me that the Fuji app doesn't replicate shooting on film? Is that what you're
Um,
than tell me right now?
I mean,
I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
I don't think so. Not yet. Hey, you try
Nah,
to
I'm just.
blow up an iPhone phone or an iPhone photo to, like, 100 by 100 feet. You can't do it. Not yet. But you can blow up a film photo. I'm pretty sure it's like it's pretty large. I heard
Yeah.
once that the what's it called, the megapixels in a or pixels in a film photo is like 100 by 100 or something like
Huh.
that, versus like 20 megapixels in like a standard iPhone camera or
Interesting.
something like that. So like the technology, I huge believer in technology.
Yeah.
It'll eventually get up to film, but we are not quite there
Interesting. Well, I've always been a Fuji film app hater, so I'm glad that you agree it can't be replicated. But I have some quick fire questions for you, just because I think they'll be fun.
yet. All right.
But anything else you'd like to say before we get there?
uh Not really. Like, this has been pretty fun. I've never been on like a podcast like this, or and never talked about myself for this long before. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little uncomfortable, but this is pretty fun.
If you don't mind me asking, then really quickly, um, like because you haven't really talked about yourself this much, like, is there an element of reflection, or is there like anything you're realizing about yourself now?
Yeah, everything we're talking about is work that I've done in the past couple of years. But in the recent year, I've actually not produced anything. The last creative project that I did for myself was in 2020 or 2019. 2019, I created a photo book for my friends and family,
Hmm.
and I felt like that was huge, and I wanted to capitalize on that. Since COVID hit, I feel like my creativity basically has had long COVID. And I don't know, I'm really looking to gain that back in some way, shape, or form. So talking about all this now made me realize, like, wow, I really haven't created in a while.
Mm.
Taking some photos here and there, but nothing, no big project or anything like that.
It's tough. I mean, like I was supposed to have a career in creativity and doing film, and like it's tough. So you're not alone in that, but um, I'm glad that if this kind of sparks something in you to inspire something. But if you're ready for the quick fire round, I have a few lined up for you.
All right, let's
All
do it.
right. First, what is a skill you don't have but wish you did have?
Oh, height. I don't know if that's a skill. I'm like 5'1".
Okay,
does,
that
does
works
that
for me.
count? Does that count as a skill?
I don't know if it does, but I like the answer, so we could go with it.
Okay.
um, if you're not at like your favorite coffee spot, but you're going to a chain, what is your favorite, or what is your go-to coffee order?
A chain. Like, shoot, I always go with cold brew. Because
Okay.
I feel like it's really hard to mess up cold brew. Drip coffee? No, no.
Uh-huh. What is your least favorite coffee chain?
Oh my gosh. I can't say Starbucks. I used to tutor back in the day, so I used to really like going there because it was easy access.
Mm.
I'd probably say Dutch Bros. This is my hot
Oh,
take. I just don't like Dutch Bros. Like,
huh.
it's too sweet. Like, people who like sweet drinks probably like there, but I just personally do not like Dutch Bros.
I've never tried it, but I like for some reason like this last year I've been seeing a lot of people posting about it and like they're like, "Oh, thank God, like I was able to get Dutch Bros." I'm like, I've never tried it, but people seem to love it.
They're the
So,
Chick-fil-A of coffee chains. Like, they great customer service. They got someone standing outside, rain or shine, like in a poncho or under a canopy, just taking orders. And I respect the hustle so much. I just don't like their drinks.
I was so confused where you're going with the Chick-fil-A comparison, but now I get it. I thought you were gonna like go on like a Republic, like how they're anti like LGBTQ rant, but
No, great
gotcha.
service, just not, yeah, not
Okay,
about the drinks.
gotcha. If you were a superhero, what would your power be?
Ooh, I watched Doctor or Marvel. I recently went through all the Marvel movies. I really like Doctor Strange. Is
Hmm.
that's his name? I really liked his powers. And just because he was a intelligent person, and with a not just like good versus evil, but like a perspective of I'm a person with a lot of power and a lot of responsibility. So I'd say Doctor Strange's power.
I like that. He actually has that's actually one of my favorite Marvel movies, and I think it's one of the most underrated. But he's also dope.
Yeah, he can refill a mug of beer in like a second, and I was like, "Yo, world hunger, we're done."
Yeah. Wait, how come he hasn't? He, that dude's got to be doing more. He's too busy. Like, what's it with the Spider-Man movies? Like messing up the fabric of time. And he could just be ending world hunger.
Yeah.
Damn. What's a book everyone should read?
Ooh, book everyone should read. Uh, this one's hard because I know everyone reads different books, but I think Being Mortal by Atul Gawande
Hmm.
talks about, I guess, mortality
Mm.
and how mortality has changed over time, and like how lifespans across generations are, increasing, and how our current, I guess, in infrastructure in like America supports that, and how it doesn't support that. So it was a very sobering book to read.
Just, I'm sure everyone said this, but like, I've heard millions of people say it, but like, for me, The Alchemist was a big one. I don't know if you've read that one, but it's like it's kind of a default answer, but I think that was a really good read.
Yes, I did read that. I think we did that for book club, if
Oh,
I'm not
nice.
mistaken, but I can't remember.
Gotcha. If you could invite five people to dinner, dead or alive, who would they be?
Ooh, five
Or five
people.
people to coffee club,
Five
whichever
people to
one.
coffee club.
Yeah.
Okay. First person that comes to mind is John Wooden. I've been a
Hmm.
huge John Wooden fan at UCLA. Invite Kobe because never got to meet him, unfortunately. Uh, I would also bring. I really like the rapper Corday, and I like his perspective on like just like life in general, and like
Yeah.
being a young black person and growing up with like wealth, and him always talking about it in his like music. I thought is pretty powerful. Plus, he just dropped Bird's Eye View. So I haven't listened to it. I'm waiting on that.
You haven't
So
listened yet?
I haven't listened yet.
I
I,
Go ahead. Continue.
yeah,
Continue.
yeah. I'm waiting. I'm waiting
Okay.
on that. Uh, what else? I think the last two, I got to get some diversity in there. I'm trying to think of female. Michelle Obama. I've always wanted to meet
Hmm.
Michelle Obama. I always thought she was just a powerful woman, uh, and like just the way she speaks, and I like it. I like her. Just adding that in there. And then, hmm, wow, probably oh, Yuri Kochiyama. Just
Huh.
because she's my Asian American like idol in a
Huh.
way. I've really liked the work. I've really like reading up on her, and I like all the work that she did for like the civil rights activism, and like for someone to do the work that she did and be as close to like Malcolm X and have that connection, I think requires to be like a different type of person, and especially as an Asian American. There's got to be something that I would really like to talk to her about, or just to hear about her experiences. And yeah, so every time I hear her name, I've always like always listen to what has to be said, but also just I really respect her
I'll
as a person.
I'll have to read up on her because I actually haven't heard of her. So
Oh,
I'll have to
she's a Malcolm X's right hand woman, and she
really.
really, yeah, she like she like the whole idea of like, yellow peril sits or is with black power, or like something along
Right.
the line of
Right.
that phrase. Like she's like one of the people that you think about, like when you
Huh.
think about that connection. And she's just, yeah, I highly recommend reading up on
Wow.
her.
I'll definitely have to because that's incredible. Because, okay, little tangent, but just before we wrap, before I ask you the final question, it's like there's all these powerful women that we never hear about. Like the only woman to ever be drafted in the NBA, the NBA
Oh
just
yeah,
passed away,
she
right?
just passed. Yeah.
And like I was like, oh, first off, let's talk about the fact that she was drafted in the NBA and how come no one like how come this is the first I've heard of this woman, and it's
Mhm.
like there's all these women that have done incredible things and I feel like we never hear about them. So, and then this is you said it's
Yuri Kochiyama.
Yuri Kochiyama. I'm gonna have to read up on her because it's like how is this not talked about more? So, thank you for that. But little tangent because it's infuriating to me sometimes. Um, Rounding it out, what would the title of your autobiography be?
Ah, when I was younger, I used to think that my title would be something like "The Quiet Life." So I always really liked
Okay.
that phrase. I stole it from a streetwear brand,
Huh.
but no, I don't think my life is quiet by any means. I don't know. I probably something with the acronym, because I think
Hmm.
where I'm at in my life is very career focused, and in
Hmm.
your career you have way too many acronyms. So
Hmm.
I'll just say WIP, work in progress.
Nice. I remember the first time I heard that it was with Carhartt. I was like, "What's Carhartt Whip?" Like Whip is just like the name of a product. I didn't know,
Yeah.
but um, love to hear that. I think that's a really great title. I was thinking maybe, and I'm not gonna make you say it, but like would be your Tumblr username. Uh, that'd be fun. But I like that. I like that answer.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
someone who likes to think that I'm always growing, and there's
mhm.
always like more to learn and more to, where I am next year is going to be completely different from where I am today. And I hope to be a smarter, more thoughtful person a year out. So
Yeah,
I feel like it's just a constant, like I'm on a constant path for growth.
yeah. No, I love that. I think that's great. Ryan, hopefully we connect soon once things are safer because it's been a minute since we've been able to get coffee. But otherwise, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And yeah, let's talk soon, man.
Yeah, definitely. Once COVID calms down, and it's all safe and sound.
Yeah, so I guess we'll never see each other again.
Oh my God. Don't say that. I
I
just got
know, no,
over
no,
I just got over with COVID. I got COVID myself, and it was a nasty experience. I
yeah,
don't wish that upon anyone.
no. I'm hopeful. I'm in all honesty, I'm trying to be hopeful, but yeah, let's link soon, man.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again to Ryan for joining me on this podcast. It was really great to hear about Fuck Yeah Coffee, about his book club, his website, and our common love for film photography. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to our show for our episodes that release on every other Tuesday and give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. Or if you're on YouTube, I realize I never say that. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe and give us a like as well. If you would like to support our show and help us grow, you can do so with a donation to the link at the bottom of the episode description. To hear more about Changing Tides, follow us on Instagram at LTSC_Changing Tides, or check out our website, thechangingtides.org. Let's continue to change the tides on mental health.